Okay, yeah. Hello and good evening, everybody, to yet another session of Talking Films Online. Today, we'll be discussing EMITAI, made by the father of African cinema, Ousmane Sembene, and the discussion will be led by Arun Kumar. Arun is a research scholar at the Department of French and Francophone Studies, FLU, Hyderabad. He was an active member and organizer of the student-led film club called Fourth Wall at FLU. His ongoing PhD work looks at the effects of post-industrial capitalism on the working class body and the transgressive methods in which the material body resists its effacement in a world that is rapidly moving towards digital capitalism in select films associated with the new French extremity cinematic movement. His research interests include body studies, post-colonial Francophone African cinema, sexploitation cinema, porn studies, propaganda films, contemporary French literature, particularly the works of Michel Houellebecq, and contemporary French language cinema. His MA dissertation investigated the relationship between aesthetics and politics in revolutionary post-colonial African Francophone cinema. He has published articles in French on the films of Robert Bresson and Ousmane Sembene. He was recently selected for a prestigious exchange program at the Paul Valéry University, Montpellier in France. Welcome, Arun, and over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everybody. Am I audible? Am I visible?
Yes, yes.
Okay. First of all, I would like to extend my gratitude to Dr. Nikhila and Dr. Geeta for the invitation. And I hope that all of you got a chance to watch the film as well. So I also apologize for the shoddy quality of the print, but unfortunately that was the only one available, which is a regular case with African and Latin American films. there is a lack of restoration work with them. So let's jump into it. So EMITAI was the third feature film directed by Ousmane Sembene, the great Senegalese director and writer. It was his third film after the first film, which was La Noire or The Black Girl, which was a monumental film in the history of African cinema. His first film was, of course, Borom Saret. La Noire or Black Girl was his first feature-length film. Borom Saret was a short film. And Borom Saret was even more pivotal because it was the very first film which was directed and written by a Black African in Sub-Saharan Africa. Because in Sub-Saharan Africa, the western part was basically colonized by French, and the French had a very monstrous law which prohibited native Black filmmakers from making cinema, which was this law was called La Décret Laval, which was named after Pierre Laval, who was the Prime Minister of France from 1930 to 34. So this Laval decree prohibited native African filmmakers from making cinema. So after this prohibition was lifted, almost lifted, it was the first film which was made by a Black African. That was Borom Saret by Sembene Ousmane. And the second film was Mondabi or La Monda, which came out in 1968. And the third film is EMITAI, which came out in 1971. So I'll just briefly recount the plot of the film, which is pretty much linear and non-complicated. So the film basically deals with forced conscription of young Senegalese men in a small village in Senegal. So this the events of the film takes place in a place called Casamance in southern Senegal near the Gambia River. So the events were inspired by real life events which took place during the colonial era. So Semben usually does this. He takes inspiration from real life events. So the timeline of the events are between 1940 and 1944. We can make this out due to the transfer of power from Marshal Pétain to Charles de Gaulle. So the men in this village, which is populated by the Diola tribe, they are forcefully conscripted into the African legion of the colonial army, and after that, the main problematic in the film happens when the colonial administration asks for rice as a form of taxation. So this is the main conflict in the film, because for the Diola tribe, which is a very vast population, which is spread around Gambia, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, all these places. So for them, rice is very important. Rice is a very sacred affair for them. According to the Diola cosmology, after the first man and woman was created, uh, the creator god is called EMITAI. That's where the title comes from. EMITAI is the creator god as well as the god of thunder as well as war. So EMITAI gave them rice. The first man and woman were um, given rice by EMITAI. So rice, the presence of rice in all the rituals are important for the Diolas. That signifies the presence of EMITAI. So the Diolas, of course, tries to resist this forceful uh, conscription as well as the forceful taking of rice from them. So that makes the whole plot of the film. So I would like to first of all talk a little bit about the importance of. Before I jump into the film as such, I would like to talk about the importance of Sandel and his role in the history of African cinema. So the emergence of native cinema, national cinemas in Africa coincided with the era of decolonization, which was the 1950s, late 1950s and early 1960s. Senegal, for example, became independent in 1960 from France. So the main project of the filmmakers who were growing up around this era of decolonization was to decolonize their own people. That was their agenda. That was the project for them. So Semben was one of the earliest filmmakers of that time, and he took up this project. Uh, in fact, Semben was the person who signified African cinema for the rest of the world. Semben meant African cinema. So yeah, so Semben made his first film in 1963, which was Boron Saret, and just a second. So he got his training from the Soviet Union. He was an established writer before he became a filmmaker. He was already a very well established and celebrated writer. Um, uh, he he decided to turn to cinema at the age of 40 because of the realization that most of his people, the native population of Senegal, his target audience, were illiterate. So that uh, more than literature, cinema would be the most accommodating medium for them to communicate with them. So that's what led him to study cinema, and he was subsequently invited to the Soviet Union, where he studied cinema at the Gorky studio. The Soviet connection comes from the French Communist Party. He was a member of the French Communist Party while he was in France. He was a dock worker in France. So Semben was instrumental in creating an atmosphere accommodative of cinema in Africa. And his cinema had a particular agenda as well, which was to uh, destroy and recreate African history. He wanted to destroy the hundreds of years of stereotypical images and uh, stereotypical images which were created by the colonialist discourse. This colonialist discourse also made use of cinema, for example. The colonialist cinema in Africa was instrumental, one of the most important parts of French colonialism, units of French colonialism. So the cinema, this particular kind of cinema reinforced the superiority of the Europeans and simultaneously asserted the inferiority of the Africans. So this led to the dehumanization as well as a creation of um, half created subjectivity among Africans. They felt incomplete. So Semben took it up as his project to rediscover the humanity of Africans. So, like I said, in this film, EMITAI, he has a very particular anti-colonialist agenda, but that is not all. He also criticizes African society and culture as well. He is not a chauvinist kind of filmmaker uh, who glorifies the past as the best of all times. But he criticizes the past as well, and he criticizes the colonial era as well. And he calls for a synthetic sort of amalgam of cultures as the future of Africa. So Semben was instrumental in creating the future of African cinema. For example, he was a signatory and organizer of the FEPACI. FEPACI was the Federation of Pan-African Filmmakers. They created the Algiers chapter in 1975. And this delineated the future path which should be taken by the filmmakers. And this, coincidentally, was very similar to the project of the third cinema filmmakers in Latin America, of Solana, Sanjetino, and all those people. And there was a rapport between Semben and these filmmakers in Latin America. They had their project was similar. They shared similar affinities towards cinema. So the Semben understood the necessity for a new cinematic language. He understood the problems of miming the cinematic language which was already existing, which was the most dominant cinematic mode of production, which was Hollywood at that time during the 50s, 40s. So he understood the need for a new cinematic language. So for this purpose, he looked to the past. He found refuge in the oral tradition of Africa. And he saw himself as a modern griot. Griot was a figure in African folklore who had multiple jobs. They were the official historiographers, they were the official storytellers, they were the official jesters. So he saw himself as a modern griot. And yeah, so he saw himself as a modern griot. and he included certain mythical elements in his films, which which he saw was a way to um, play with the uh, dominant cinematic language. For example, he would include not in this, even in this film there are mythical elements, supernatural elements are there, gods are appearing, dream sequences are there. Uh, Even his aesthetics is influenced by his politics. I'll just give a couple of examples in this film. I'll not go into detail. I'll leave it for the discussion. For example, he extensively uses wide shots and medium shots in the film. So this has a political agenda because in the cinematic universe of Sandhan, there is no individual hero. You see, there are no close-ups of the individual hero or the individual hero which comes to the center stage. The main subject of Sandhan's cinema is community. So you will not see Humphrey Bogart like uh, uh, solitary hero occupying the space in Sandhan's cinema. It is always the community. Even in this film, there is no hero or heroine as such. Uh, all these people come together and they form an organic entity, a unitary entity. So that is Sembel's vision. Like even in other films, there are heroes and heroines, but he maintains that uh, heroes and the heroes and heroines are necessary for the African people. You know, the young audience requires African heroes and African heroines, but he maintains that these heroes and heroines are produced by the community. They do not occur in isolation. And this is exactly how he saw the role of the artist in Africa as well. He rejected, just like most other African filmmakers and writers of the time, the figure of the solitary artist writing in isolation from the community, which was the norm in Western civilization. You know, the artist is always a lonely figure. But he famously said that you know, the artist in Europe writes alone in a cabin in the woods, but in Africa the artist writes in the streets, surrounded by people. So this was his vision uh, for artistic creation. Uh, Yeah, so Semben, Semben had faced multiple problems while making even this film. This film was censored for a year in Senegal because he was extremely critical of the then president Leopold Senghor. So this film was banned for a year, and the ban was revoked after a year. But even in France, the film was not allowed to screen. It was not officially banned, but whenever he tried for an application to screen the film in France, it somehow fell on some or the other day related to Charles de Gaulle. So he used to jokingly say that Charles de Gaulle dies every day for my film. Whenever I try to screen my film, Charles de Gaulle dies or he's born that day, whatever. Yeah, so Semben's poetics figured in the project of decolonization, like I said, because after the era of independence, 60s was the era of independence. Most countries in Africa took two divergent paths towards the future. So there was an official policy taken by certain countries, which was called France Afrique. I'm talking about the francophone countries. So France Afrique was the official policy of certain countries, and they maintained that they will continue close relationships with the French government uh, in the future as well. So this was a clearly neo-colonialist agenda. I mean, there were other countries which resisted this sort of collaboration with former colonizers. For example, you can see in Congo, Lumumba was there, Patrice Lumumba. He was assassinated, murdered by CIA and the Belgians. And in Burkina Faso, there was Thomas Sankara, who also resisted the French intervention, neo-colonialist intervention, and he was extremely critical of aid, the notion of aid, international aid. He saw it as a neo-colonial debt trap. So Semben identified the need to communicate with his people. So here, Semben's cinema is not a kind of cinema where he's speaking on behalf of his people. He's not trying to do that. He's not saying that his people are voiceless. He doesn't deny the agency of his people. But rather, he's saying that he is having a conversation with his people. His cinema is never intended for the European audiences. His cinema is intended for Africans as well as other oppressed peoples of the world. So he's trying to have a conversation with his people. So it is not, the question is not, can the subaltern speak like Spivak? The question is, are you able to have a conversation with the subaltern? See, that is the question. And Semben proved that he can. And he still remains a very pivotal figure in Africa. He inspired many other filmmakers, along with his contemporaries. For example, Jibril Diop Mombeti was a maverick filmmaker from Senegal who came after Semben, and he was his contemporary as well. And even today, for example, many filmmakers in Africa has cited Semben as an influence. For example, from Chad, there is Harun, and and there is Abdurrahman Sissako. All these people, even outside Africa, the influence of Semben is substantial. For example, Semben had a pivotal role in inspiring the filmmakers of LA Rebellion of the 80s. They had cited Semben as an influence. There are other filmmakers as well, like Spike Lee, John Singleton. All these people were influenced by Semben's cinema. I think I'll stop here now, and we'll discuss more during the coming up discussion.
Thank you, Arun.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, you have raised several interesting issues, especially the one relating Sembene's aesthetics with his politics. So it's now open for discussion. Anyone would like to go first? Yes, Tarkeshwar.
I just wanted to tell you that you are not audible.
Oh, okay.
Your voice was feeble, that's all.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, now it's better.
Okay,
Yes.
so should I repeat? Okay, yeah. I was saying thank you, Arun, for raising several important issues worthy of discussion. And especially I was struck by the way you related Sembene's aesthetics to his politics. It's now open for discussion. Would anyone like to go first? Okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was actually, while watching the film, I was reminded so much of Fanon Wretched of the Earth. And at one point, I almost felt as if, I was watching a cinematic adaptation of Fanon's book. Firstly, Fanon's insistence on the role of the intellectual in a revolution. And here I thought of Sembene himself as, the intellectual who, by making the first feature film in Africa, is in a sense creating a revolution in the history of world cinema. And also the role of the lumpen proletariat, which, as we know, Fanon specifically uses to describe not the industrial proletariat the way traditional Marxist philosophy would do, but the peasant class. And here we see in the film also that the whole plot, as Arun reminded us, revolves around this question of rice as tax, and how the peasant community in the village resists this kind of an imposition of the rice tax. And also, and I think it also has something very typical of Sembini's films, and that is the role played by women. A large number of films of Sembini emphasizes the role of women. So this is what I was thinking about while watching it.
Yes, can I respond?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so of course, Fanon was evidently Fanon was an influence on cinema. They had met and they had, yeah, they had discussed about this. But I don't think this is a direct adaptation.
No, not
that way.
I mean, I was just saying it by way
Yeah.
of, in a manner of
yeah.
speaking.
But
No,
there
definitely not.
there actually exists an adaptation of Fanos, Wretched of the Earth. There's a documentary called Concerning Violence, which is based on the first chapter of Wretched of the Earth, called On Violence.
On violence.
So again, Fanon's influence can be seen in this film regarding the usage of violence as well, because Fanon talks about two types of violence: the violence of the colonized and the violence of the colonized. So here, the resistance shown by the women, particularly, is they do not really engage in violence, but there is a particular sequence where that kid is there, a little boy is there, and he holds the gun towards the camera. Yes. So this reminded me of a book which was written by Melissa Thackeray, which is called Africa Shoots Back. So this is literally and metaphorically Africa shooting back at hundreds of years of stereotypical depiction of Africa. Yeah. And about the rice, rice also is an important aspect. It shows the material basis of colonialism. It was more than subjugation of the other. It was about exploitation of the material resources. What David Harvey would call accumulation by dispossession.
Right. There is a question in the chat box by someone called Aroma. What do you make of the translator's role inside the film in relation to the colonial experience? As I understand, there is a mediator between the village people and the French sergeant. Also, as you said, this is a specific type of rice to Wolof speakers. What other implications such an act of resistance would indicate?
Unmute yourself, Arun.
Yes, Arun, you are on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, so this is more of an interpreter in the film, and interpreters occupy a very important role in colonial literature and cinema. So they occupy this liminal space in between both cultures, in between the European colonizers and the colonized. So Sembel was particularly, we had a particular disdain for interpreters. He used to call them people who don't belong either there or here. He used to call them cultural bastards. Uh, so that is interesting. The role of the interpreter is very important. Uh, there are novels as well, francophone novels also, which deals with the role of the interpreter. For example, there is a novel by Amadou Kuruma, who is a writer from Ivory Coast. He has written a novel called Monet, and it is basically about the incommunicability of certain words and certain feelings. So the interpreter can be there, but the interpreter cannot, the Europeans cannot understand certain feelings and certain words which are unique to Africans. There is a lot lost in translation, and translation can lead to all sorts of troubles. And the rice, yes. So the rice, like I said, it is related to their religious beliefs. Rice signifies the presence of EMITAI, the god EMITAI. So it is necessary that rice should be present during all the important rituals in one's life, during the birth, during the marriage, during death. So if rice is not there, then it is incomplete. So without rice, the funeral ritual cannot take place. And if it is done in a shoddy manner, then the person will not be granted heaven. So it is important for them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Arun. Yeah, and I'm happy to inform you that today in our midst, we have Sonal Radia Tyagi, who is an FTII graduate and one of the early women editors in India. And she teaches film studies at NID, Ahmedabad, Gujarat Law Society Institute of Design, Nirma University, and some institutions in Bombay as well. So, Sonal also has done a very long-standing, a long-running serial for Kenya Broadcasting Corporation. That was a cookery show that she produced. Sonal, would you like to say something about the film or in African cinema in general? Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks so much for having me. I couldn't watch the film this week or today because I was running around traveling. But yes, the first time I saw Sembene was in the 80s. And I thought, wow. And Arun, you raised this very important point that we used to talk about in the 70s and 80s about Latin American cinema and the South-South connection. I remember in the 80s, we would all talk about South-South, that why did our media have this bearing West, the North, as opposed to connections between the South. And it was a big thing at that time. But later I realized there was a huge difference between Latin American cinema and West African cinema. I'm referring to West African particularly because Latin American cinema was independent. West African cinema, whether you look at Sembene or the other filmmakers of that time, were co-produced by French agencies. Okay, the funding was French, the technicians were French. So what did I like to talk about authenticity? They were telling African stories, but they were telling African stories for a Western audience through Western eyes, almost. We can debate that point, but if you fast forward by about 30 years to what the Nigerians are doing later, it's very different. Nigerian things are like popular Bollywood. They're loud, they're crude, but they're telling African stories for African audiences. So I think that is where the growth of African cinema has come. Okay, from looking to the north and to the ex-colonial powers for funding and adapting their stories accordingly, to not caring about, Western perceptions, but through developing their own narratives, their own stories, what felt real to them. And I think this came about. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in Africa when all that was happening. I was a filmmaker in Kenya. Two things happened. Nigerians did not depend on any kind of support. Okay, they were just completely financially viable unto themselves. But in the East African countries, they were looking at the European model of mandated programming. Kenya didn't have it, so the Kenyan film industry developed much later. Tanzania mandated 40% local programming. So suddenly you had all these Tanzanian filmmakers making films. Not have been great, they were very crude. And remember, by this time, digital video is coming. So the cost of filmmaking is very accessible. And concurrently, there was another growth taking place. Just as we have Tata, Sky, or whatever, the OTT platforms have not yet come in. There was this very white South African thing called DSTV. And again, they started a channel called Africa Magic. Africa Magic was solely for African programming. So suddenly you had a bottom line. You could make a film and get support. And you were not looking at making that one accomplished film every 3 years with European funding. So African cinema today is very different. It's very local, very vibrant, and not looking to Europe for financial support. It's come into its own. Yeah, I think that's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Sonal. Arun, would you like to respond?
No, yeah, what she said is absolutely correct. The economic dependence on France, especially, is still it's still a huge problem for. I think it is still a problem for African filmmakers, francophone African filmmakers, because the currency which is still used in some of these countries are franc CFA, which is printed in France and allocated by France. So that economic dependence is very direct and very open. And like you said, there are co-productions between French production companies as well as local African production companies which are budding up. But Semben had his own production house for a while, at least. This film was produced by Domirev Films or something. That's called Domirev Films, I think. It's a Russian sounding name. So he tried crowdfunding as well. He talks about this for the first film Baron Saret. He tried crowdfunding in a way which reminded me of John Abraham, because he used to carry around Charlie Chaplin's films to villagers in vans, and he used to show it, and he used to recruit actors even like that. Even actors were hesitant to join, associate themselves with films, because there was no tradition of theater as such in Africa. It is more to do with oral tradition, and they identified cinema more with the griot, as I said, the folkloric figure of the griot. And the problem was that African societies are also hierarchical, and the griot usually came from a lower caste. Even though the griot had an immense amount of power and agency, he came from a lower caste. So people, even in the contemporary age, in the 80s, 90s, they identified cinema with the role of the griot. So they were hesitant to associate with cinema. So in order to overcome this hesitancy, Semben himself started acting in his films. For example, in this film also Semben is there as an actor. He plays the role of a corporal. That scene when Petan's poster is replaced by Charles de Gaulle's poster. So a corporal comes and questions the logic behind this. How can a 2-star brigadier replace a 7-star marshal? So that is Semben. Yeah. So he was an actor as well.
Okay. There's another question in a comment rather in the chat from Aroma. Maybe by refusing to give away rice, they are in a way rejecting handing in their history, a move from material to immaterial reality, or more like the intricate link between the two. Also, I do not know about the interpreter in the director's films, but is he not enabling the colonial experience or making it exist? A huge role, as you said.
Yes, yes, of course. The interpreter is enabling the colonization process. And I've heard that like after the decolonization process started, there were several instances where the families of interpreters were hounded by uh, people, nationalist people and all. In unfortunate incidents, so many people were killed and all. And also about the first part of it, yes, that is also true, because you see one of the aims of the one of the side projects of colonialism was denial of history to the colonized people. They had to show that okay, Africans didn't have any sort of history, or Latin American people didn't have any sort of history before the arrival of the Europeans. So this was done. This was accomplished through several colonial institutions, even before the arrival of cinema. For example, anthropology, ethnography, all those colonial institutions were aimed at doing this. So there were several exceptions, like in India, where they couldn't obviously refute all these evidences of civilization. But in Africa, they were more ruthless. So this is certainly a way of regaining that sense of history. Yes.
Nikhila, I think you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to make a couple of points about the film. One is, I mean, I was just thinking about, the politics of representation of the colonial encounter in post-colonial times. I mean, for instance, in Indian cinema, much of this revolves around, this way in which the colonial power, is kind of paid in its own coin, or whatever. In a film like this, as you rightly mentioned, Arun, I mean, it's a film about the community, but it's also about the community, whose resistance kind of withers down. So it's not something that they can carry through the film. It's also in that sense a film about a failure. So I was just thinking about in post-colonial times, what does it mean to make a film where the colonized, I mean, they pay in every way. So I was just kind of, while watching the film, you're kind of, willing the appearance of someone who will kind of take them out of the impasse that they find themselves in. And it never comes. It never happens. So I was just thinking aloud about that aspect. The second thing that I found quite different, stylistically from the rest of the film is the appearance of the spirits and, what happens when the chief gets killed and then another chief is replaced. So that particular part of the film also was quite interesting. Also as a kind of, questioning of the gods and the crisis that, this brings about. So I thought this some very interesting ambiguity and discussion there, which is essential. I mean, which they kind of take up. And the last aspect is, what you mentioned, this 2-star, 7-star. So I mean, that is about the only moment where there is some way in which the irrationality of what they're going through kind of comes through in this form of a critique. So these were some of the things that I just wanted to comment on. But a very interesting film. And also the last thing that I wanted to say, of course, was the way in which Semben has kind of been, I think, canonized in Western academia. I've seen a few course lists where he figures as part of discussion on post-colonialism and Africa. So yeah, these were the things that I just wanted to say. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So going back to your first point, yes, there is no messiah, there is no hero who is, who will come and lead his people or her people out of this ditch. But there are heroes like that in other films. For example, this film is part of an unofficial trilogy called Rebel Trilogy, about which shows moments of resistance and power struggle. The first one is EMITAI, second one is Khala, Xala, Khala, and the third one is Chedo, and Chedo means rebel. So in this third one, it is actually a princess. It is a tribal princess which leads the fight against the colonizers. But there are double colonize. It is a double colonization. This tribal people, this ethnic group, they fight both against Europeans as well as against Islam. So Semben was very revolutionary in that way. He was very brave enough to criticize Islam in a majoritarian Islamic country like Senegal at that point. He even considered Islam as an invading force there. Yeah. So going back to it, there is no messiah, of course. So that is an important part of Semben's criticism of the moments in African history where people didn't react. People who could have resisted didn't resist. There is at the by the end of his life, he said that he was almost disappointed in African people. He tried and tried, but the changes that he envisaged didn't really take place. So he really criticizes the men of the village, the elders particularly. The younger men are just taken away by the French army, but the older men, they sit around this tree. Again, this tree is a mythical it has a mythical significance. It is part of the oral tradition. So all sorts of deliberations and discussions, important decisions, all are taken under the tree. So they just sit around and they discuss about what to do. And ultimately, they do not really take any sort of decision. That one elder was there, the chief, Jimenko. So he was the one who took a decision without consulting the gods. The rest of the people were worried about what the gods will think. So he went about with those other youngsters who were waiting for him, and he got killed. So this again, made the elders push the elders to the back foot. They again become hesitant, but ultimately they showed a resistance at the very end. When they said they will no longer walk with their eyes, and they were shot in the field. And this shooting is also interesting because it's not actually shown in the image of that shooting is not really shown. The image cuts off and we hear the shots in the background. And this is again a sort of metalepsis here. The film jumps from the diegetic space of that cinema into a sort of real life space where the sound of the bullets which are persisting signifies the colonial violence, which spills over into the post-colonial period. This was my sort of reading. Again, yeah. So this sort of criticism of men is simultaneously, along with it, we have the validation of women, right? Like you rightfully said, women play a very important role in Sembin's filmography. All his films, especially his last film, which was called the Mulade, which was about female genital mutilation. So Sembin had always said that he had a very unique connection with women, and he was brought up by his two grandmothers, maternal and paternal. So he had a certain affinity towards women. So that's what comes out here. And the second part about the sequences where the spirits appear, yes, there is a tinted, dreamy-like appearance to it, which is very distinct from the rest of the film, which is an aesthetic choice that he made. And the third one, yes, the irrationality of the yeah. So that basically shows the irrationality of colonialism as such. See, colonialism is not personified by a single person. That is the basic message of that. It is a system rather, and people may change. Peta might have been a Nazi collaborator, but he was replaced by Charles de Gaulle, who was the father of liberty and everything, the new France. But nothing changed for the African people, the colonized people. They were still colonized till the 60s. So yes, and yeah, about the last point about Sembin's popularity in Western academia. So this was there are two documentaries on Sembin. The first one was made by the writer Gugiwa Thiong'o. So he, along with Mantia Diawara is also a very prominent African intellectual and writer in America. So another one is called Sembin, just Sembin with a that was directed by Samba Gajigo. So Samba Gajigo was Sembin's official biographer, and he was a professor in the United States, and he is the one who introduced Sembin's cinema to the US. He popularized it there, and he played a pivotal role in the popularization of Sembin's cinema worldwide. Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, thanks, Arun.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to step in at this point? Yes.
Yeah, I found. Yeah, I found the slaughtering of the goat very interesting, because that goes on to the scene where the white man is dominating the black person, right? Just like we are slaughtering animals and killing them for ritual, right? The ritual of colonialism is also very strong in the film. And also, I want you to comment, Arun. I want you to comment about the skull caps of the two boys who steal a cycle and then one gets shot, etc. So, can you comment about them? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, first like you said, it's correct. There is a certain by placing those shots side by side, he is expressing something there of the dehumanization of the African people, treatment of the African people as less than human. So this is again expressed through certain other shots as well. So you see these women are made to sit under the sun as punishment, right? Till the men come out with the rice. So during that sequence, we see that women are being held here, and there are shots of animals roaming around freely, pigs, dogs, and hens, and everything. So these are placed simultaneously to show the dehumanization of these people who are held captive. Yeah. And about the skull cap, yeah, okay, this I do not know.
Nikhila?
Yeah,
Nikhila? Yeah. Nikhila?
no.
Yeah, tell me. Nikhila? Geeta, yes, tell me.
Yeah, just tell
Just-
her. Just say Nikhila. Geeta's mom is at a call.
Nikhila? Ah. Nikhila? Yes, tell me, please. Yeah, please tell me.
Please go ahead, Arun.
Okay. Yeah, about the skull caps, I am not really sure about it. I even contacted, like while I was working on my MA dissertation, I contacted people in Senegal. Even they couldn't really help me with it. It is some sort of signifier. It is a rite of passage. That's what I learned. That's the, closest to what I got. So people, the young men who haven't reached a certain age, they wear it, and after that age, they become men, real men, and they're not supposed to wear it. So that signifies that you're still a child, you're not a man, is what I learned. Maybe it has other significations as well. I contacted some people there, and they were not sure. So I didn't get anyone from this particular tribe, so I couldn't get that exact information. Yeah, it's not the Islamic skull cap, that I know.
Okay, anyone else wants to come in now? Tarkeshwar, Sanjay, yes, please go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
I was thinking about the irony working at different levels. So, for example, in one of the scenes, one of the French soldiers, he says that these people are savages. And when Africans are discussing among themselves, they also say that they are barbarians, justly. So it's like, who is the barbarian? It's always the other who is barbarian. So it goes back to the Greek times when anybody who didn't speak Greek was known as barbarian. So for Greek people, since they couldn't understand the language of the other people, they called them barbarians. So here we have Africans calling French people barbarians, French people calling Africans barbarians. So that's like an irony that we see in conflict these two people, and it's Second World War already going on, where there is a movement launched by General de Gaulle and his people. It was known as resistance. This movement is known as resistance. So it has a specific name, not the simple dictionary meaning called resistance or resistance. So it's in the specific sense of Second World War that it was used, where there were so many people, like even there are poems written on the uniting people, being united, like even Catholics and communists working together for the liberation of France. So that was the movement resistance. And this is also a resistance here, like these people in the village, in a remote village in Senegal, that they are resisting the French colonial powers. These are the two different types of resistance. So one is in the name of democracy, because the Nazis, they had occupied certain parts of France, and Marshal Pétain was a Nazi collaborator. He was working for Nazis, and many people, they left that particular area where his rule was there. So they used to go to southern parts wherever there was no influence of Pétain. So what happens that this Pétain, who is like Arun has already talked about, that who was a Nazi collaborator, he is replaced by General de Gaulle, who represents or who was the leader of the resistance and later on became a very popular president also, though very authoritarian, as it turned out to be during 1968 movement. So, so on the one hand, we have Pétain. Pétain is being replaced by Gaulle again, which is a kind of irony, which is shown in the film, where Semben is asking that, why you replace this poster with this another poster, and what is the logic and all that. So, I mean, Pétain, who is a Nazi collaborator and who was, collaborating with the Germans and keeping his own people, so, and on the other hand, someone who is known as liberator. So General de Gaulle is supposed to be liberator of France. Nothing changes. So Pétain is replaced by Gaulle, but the colonialism goes on. And another irony is about the gods. Already Nikhila talked about that, they are questioning gods now. The first chief questioned gods, that where are they, or where were they when these people came to our village, and they have abandoned us. And even this second chief also, when he is asked, though he seems to be very reluctant in saying anything, but when he is asked, he says that he also started doubting whether gods are really interested in our affairs, and it seems they have abandoned them. They have abandoned the village. So it's like these people, they are not ready to abandon gods, but gods have abandoned them. So that's also kind of irony. And it is interesting that Semben is showing this, because normally in the post-colonial films, like you have the glorification of the natives, that how they fought against, like even you might have seen in this latest film RRR also, that so as if the colonized were all good, they were all united, there was no contradiction among them, and they were fighting against one enemy. So this thing is problematized in the film, which is good that Semben has worked on that. And the role of the interpreter, of course, as there is another short story of Semben, and I don't know whether film was made, Arun knows better, that there is tribal scar. There also there is this mediator that who supplies slaves. So he is like, I mean, the one who is facilitating this kind of forced labor or slavery, who is a mediator between the colonizer and the colonized. And as far as the role of women, of course, we have seen in Mulade that it's completely dominated by women. And in others also, which I think it was there, I think in Khala or Sedo, that the queen is there, one, yeah. So there also we have seen that there is this very dominant role reserved for women in the film, just as in this film also, because the old people are in the village, the young people, they have gone on the battlefront, and children are still children. So it is hugely dominated by women again here also. Yeah, so thank you very much for this interesting discussion, Arun, and your presentation was excellent.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Arun, would you like to respond?
Uh, No, no, not really.
Okay.
Yeah, but about one point. About that first comment about savages, calling each other savages and barbarians. So, so there, Europeans had this notion that along with no sense of history, Africans also had no sense of morality. Africans didn't know what was right or wrong. It was always Africans were always viewed through this paternalistic and condescending eyes. They were treated as children who needed to be taught the ways of the cultured man. So, so the in the 19th century, when the Europeans again came to Africa, they had been there since 17th, early 17th, 16th centuries and all. The transatlantic slave trade was happening, but more aggressive colonialism started in 19th century with the scramble of Africa. So it was during this period that they brought Christianity more aggressively, in which they called it was part of what they called the civilizing mission. La mission civilisatrice is the French. So they wanted to spread the word of God. They wanted to spread the Bible in order to teach Africans about morality. And Samben, incidentally, he rebukes this in one of his interviews. He says that Europeans have nothing to teach us about morality. Once they read about our culture and our history, they will understand that we do not lack morality. We have enough agency to understand what is right and wrong. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Also, I thought the way the discussions were conducted by the elders, they were done in such a civil manner, with each one waiting for the other's turn, and something so democratic about the whole procedure. And that actually flies in the face of, the colonialists' constructions of the Africans as savages and things like that.
Yes, much more civilized than the discussions which take place inside
In Parliament.
European parliaments.
Yes.
Yeah, Indian Parliament, everywhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, please, Sonal, come in.
Hi, we talk about the colonial legacy. If you go back to African history, one of the saddest things is the way Africa was divided up. It was literally the Europeans sitting on a table somewhere in Europe, and they drew lines across the continent. You take this, I take this, I take this. So even today in Africa, if you want to draw the maps of the countries, apart from, like, say, the lakes and the rivers and geographical boundaries, the rest of them are very easy to draw because they're straight lines. They literally, so tribes were divided, families were divided. They just, like, this is Britain, this is Belgium, this is Germany, that kind of thing. So it was, apart from this imposing Christianity, there was also this very, you're going to learn French, you're going to learn Belgian, you're going to learn English, that kind of thing. It was a construct imposed on them. Yeah.
Thank you, Sonal. Yeah, Arun.
Yes. So that is what's called the scramble for Africa, which took place in the late 19th century, starting with the 1980s. So there were conferences which were held all across Europe, in Berlin, Paris, London, to decide on the way in which Africa will be cut up, like you said. So these lines were hastily drawn up, and just like the borders between India, Pakistan, etc. So these lines were hastily drawn up, and it was divided up among colonial powers to control competition. So the fate of the Africans were decided in Europe. So there is something similar to this also in the film, because you see that sequence where in the city they talk about these two French officers, these high-ranking officers, the one with the beard and the other guy. They sit in a office room and they talk about the rise of the Diolas, and we see that the voice spills over, the conversation spills over in voice off, but images we see are of the fields and the people, the Diolas working in the rice fields. So this again shows the decisions being made about their future inside a room in a distant place. Yes.
Atira, you had unmuted. Would you like to say something? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Tarkeshwar, please go ahead.
Yeah, there is nothing special that I would like to add, but to respond to some of the issues that have come up. One is about the distinctiveness of quote unquote resistance to colonialism in Africa. I always wondered when the post-colonial subaltern scholars in India saying that whatever they are saying about colonialism and nationalism is applicable to all countries in Asia and Africa. I was always wondering, how is it possible? That shows another kind of arrogance of these quote unquote Indian post-colonial scholars. So that was very clear. The implications of colonialism and the way we built resistance to it or failed to build resistance to it is quite complex, even within Indian context, let alone understanding Africa through the framework developed by our post-colonial and subaltern scholars. That is one point. And the second point, it's more or less related to what I said earlier about the role of the translator. So in the Indian context, all those who have worked on the role of the translator in the context of colonialism are Dubashis, are the mediators, are native informants. There are various names through which they're identified, they're recuperated, their role is analyzed now today in the Indian context, in the post-colonial context. So we always tend to identify the agency of these mediators come translators. How the colonial discourse gets translated as nationalist discourse. So that kind of subversive element, I couldn't see in the translator in this film. Maybe I don't know, it's because of the subtitling, I don't know the original language. Because the subtitle was very, yes, of course, the subtitle has to be very brief and crisp. But here, there used to be one subtitle for 2-3 dialogues. So if they have translated what the Frenchman has said, they wouldn't translate what the translator is saying. So it is understood that he is verbatim translating what the that French sergeant has asked him to convey to the natives. So in that sense, if there is a discrepancy between the two, we couldn't identify it. So in that sense, all those people who are natives but work with the colonial power seem to have been rendered transparent vehicles of colonialism, except for that making fun of the way the power changes in France, and it completely builds their understanding of how power transfer should happen. So, except for that, there's not much kind of subversive role played by the mediators or double agents. So you don't see double agents much here. Maybe that is one of the reasons for the kind of tragedy that colonialism brought upon what we call as Africa. Again, we tend to club Africa together, but even within Africa, the question of nation, the question of colonialism is quite varied. Not only because there were different European countries which were ruling it, but also because what was the basis of nationalism in Africa? Because that community discourse was much more stronger, and the lines were drawn by somebody else. So it is a kind of multi community political entities that were created as nation. So even today they were not able to cope with those multi-community nations. Or was there an effort to uh, create a kind of anti-colonial struggle, bringing all these communities together? That also we don't see majorly in everywhere in what we call as African continent. So it's also uneven there. So in that sense, looking at this film was quite important for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatsish. Yes, Sonal, you have something to say?
Hi, again, not about the film specifically, but thank you for raising all those points. Africa's a continent, not a country. So you're so right in saying this. And they're all so very different. I just wanted to say something, again, non-film related. When you were talking about the Indian response to post-colonialism and the African, just a little bit that most people may not be aware of. In Kenya, there was a struggle for independence within East Africa. Uganda didn't struggle, they just inherited it from Kenya. But in Kenya, the Mau Mau struggled. And when the independence fighters were jailed, they were the famous 7, I forget their names, but when they were jailed, Nehru sent Indian lawyers to defend them because no one else would fight for them. All the other lawyers in Kenya had been British trained and didn't want to argue. Nehru personally sent Indian lawyers to defend the Kenyan independence fighters. That is something we don't know about in India. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it's like saying Asia. Indonesia is very different from India. So we just say Africa. It's not Africa. It's so many different countries. So thank you for saying that again.
Yeah. Thank you, Sonal. Any more interventions? Okay, in that case, we will conclude this session. Thank you very much, Arun. It's been a very interesting discussion, and thank you all for logging in and participating in the discussion. Thank you, Sonal, for your presence and your inputs. Thank you all very much. Good night.
Thank you, Arun. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
See
you,
you next week.
Arun. Yeah, very nice. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night, Arun.